Hello, everybody, and welcome to our Keyman 14 for Linux webinar presentation. This will be presented by Eberhard, my colleague, who is based in, give me a second for this. He's based out of Germany in a small town called Holhazen. So with that, I should mention that this is part of a series of 9 webinars that we're hosting this week. We're about halfway through it with some webinars left for tomorrow that are more developer-oriented ones on use of Keyman Developer for keyboards and for lexical model development. There will be links that should be appearing quite shortly on the slides about all the webinars, which will include links to those that have already completed and to this one after it's done, given a day or so. So this deep dive webinar for Linux should last approximately 30 minutes, including questions. And there will be time for those questions at the end. And with that, please take it away, Eberhard.
Yeah, thanks, Josh. So what's new in Keyman for Linux? So we fixed a lot of bugs, mostly small ones, also some bigger ones. We improved the Ubuntu packages so that the dependencies are now correct and get automatically installed. We worked on the user interface, and so that's more polished now. We added the ability to display the user interface in different languages. And we also added the crash reporting to century.keyman.com, as we did in all the other all the other platforms. And we also made 2 important new improvements. One is if you install a keyboard, it now gets automatically added to the list of the system keyboards. Previously, you had to do an extra step for that. And the other one is if you install a keyboard, if you search for a keyboard and install it, it will get installed for that particular language you searched for. So before you can use Keyman, you have to install it. And there are 2 ways you can do that. So one is it's available on a PPA on Launchpad under this link, and it's also available under packages.sal.org. And on the download page on keyman.com/linux/download, you'll find instructions how to add either one of those repos and also how to install Keyman. Okay, so the improved user interface. So how does it look? On the left side, we have the list of the installed keyboards. And on the right side, we have 2 sets of buttons. The upper 4 buttons are have functionality for the currently selected keyboard. So uninstall, of course, removes the currently selected keyboard. About shows information about the keyboard. So shows the version, the ID, description, where it is located on the disk, and also a QR code and a link for sharing. And if you click this button, you get this dialog, and you will notice that it talks about package name, package ID, package version, and so on. And what's meant here is the Keyman keyboard package, not to be confused with the Ubuntu package. So a Keyman package is basically the keyboard itself, and it can contain 1 or more fonts and some other information, and all that gets bundled up in a .kmp file. Okay, so help displays a keyboard-specific help page that usually shows the layout of the keyboard or has a description what keys to type to get a certain character. And this is the same page that you get after you install a keyboard. So by clicking help, you can go back to that page. And then the last one is options. So for most keyboards, this will be grayed out, but some keyboards have additional settings, and that can be set with this button. So for example, the IPA keyboard allows you to specify whether you want to type the modifier key before or after the basic key. So the lower set of buttons here are more general functionality. Refresh just reloads the list of keyboards. Download allows you to search for a keyboard and install it. If you already downloaded a KMP file or copied it from somewhere else, you can use the install button, and that allows you to select a local file and install it, and then close, of course, to exit the dialog. So let's take a look at that. So I have a Vasta Linux here. I have an English keyboard installed as the only keyboard right now. And so let's start up Keyman by typing Keyman, and that will open the Keyman configuration. I don't have any keyboards installed right now, so I click download, and that brings up the search dialog, which allows me to search. And as soon as I start typing and type the couple of characters, it automatically starts the search and then shows the results. They are listed by the number of downloads, sorted by the number of downloads. So you can click on one here, and it will show the description of that keyboard in more detail, and also the big green install button. So we decide that's the wrong keyboard. We can right click, and that will bring up that context menu, which allows us to go back to the previous search result screen. Okay, let's go with this Khmer Anchor keyboard and install that. And clicking the install button downloads the keyboard, and it brings up this dialog that shows the currently the keyboard and also the fonts that come with this keyboard. And click install, which installs it, and then shows this help page with the, in this case, the layout of the keyboard in the different layers. Okay, so, and after clicking OK, it restarts the Keyman configuration dialog, and Khmer Anchor now shows up here. And it also shows up here in the keyboard selection pop-up. Okay, so let's see if this actually works. So I open the text editor, have English selected, I can type in English. And if I switch to Khmer, for some reason in this virtual machine, I always have to click twice. I don't know why, but well, it works this way. And then I can type in Khmer. Okay, so that's one way to install a keyboard. The other way is to go through the Keyman website. Oops. And I should switch back to English. And here we can search as well. So let's search for Danish in this case. And yeah, you noticed we get the same search page that we got in from the dialog, and we get the same result page. So let's go with the Ldml one, install that. You notice here we have an additional button which allows you to use it in the keyboard in the browser without installing it. But we also have the install keyboard button, which installs it on your system. And if you do that, it should come up. Yeah, so my browser is too old, so it requires an extra step. Usually it directly comes up with the usually it offers you directly to open it in Keyman configuration, but I have to do this extra click and then can open it with the Keyman keyboards thing, and then I get the same install page that I got previously. Click install, get this help page, and then it now shows up as Danish, Euro, Latin. For some reason, it also added the German one. I haven't looked into that, why that is. It might be because I previously had that installed and didn't remove all the traces it had before. Yeah. So if we now go back to our Keyman configuration, it doesn't show up here because it opened the second instance for the installation. So, but if we click refresh, then it's listed here as well. And then I can switch to Danish and type Mer Ærø, which is a Danish island in the Baltic Sea. Okay. So another feature we added is the Keyman error reporting. So what this does is if the program encounters an error condition, it sends an error report to sentry.keyman.com. And that works automatically, so you don't have to do anything manually. And these reports allow us developers to see that something went wrong and allows us to fix the problems in the code. The error report contains the exact location where the error happened in the code, and together with some additional information like the operating system and version, the Keyman version, host name, and it might contain the name of the Keyman keyboard or the search you did. And it doesn't contain any keystrokes or any other private information. So currently this is implemented for kmconfig only. In the next versions, we will add that to the other tools as well. But for now, it's only in Keyman config. At the moment, it's not possible to turn this off in the UI, but you can set an environment variable, Keyman_no_sentry. So if you're concerned with your privacy and don't want the error reports to be sent, you can open a terminal and then type Keyman_no_sentry = 1, and then space km-config, and then it will start kmconfig without sending error reports. So Ubuntu by default comes with an on-screen keyboard, which is called onboard. But that doesn't work with Keyman. So we made a slightly modified version called onboard Keyman. and that works with Keyman. And what it does is that it shows the layout of the currently selected keyboard, and it also allows you to click on screen and type that way. That might be a good way if you learn a new keyboard or don't remember where the keys are. So let's take a look at that. Okay, so I have an Ubuntu 2010 machine here, 2 keyboards. Let's start onboard. And if I search for that, it comes up with 2 results. One is the onboard settings. That's the default settings dialog for onboard that you get. We didn't modify anything there. And the defaults usually work pretty well. The other one is onboard itself. We start now, and then it comes up with this on-screen keyboard down here. And currently we have the English keyboard selected, so it shows the English layout. But if we switch to Khmer, then I can type some random characters because I don't speak Khmer. If I click Shift key, then it shows the Shift layer. If I double click, it becomes red, and then it doesn't turn off after each keystroke, which might be useful in some cases. Okay, so where this isn't so terribly useful is for keyboards that make use of key combinations. So if we switch to the IPA keyboard, it just shows the English layout, but it doesn't show what key combinations I can type to get the extra special characters. And in the preparation of this talk, I noticed that even if you know the key combinations, it doesn't work because there's some bug, and so it just types the characters, but doesn't do its magic. So we'll have to fix that at one point. Okay, so another area we worked on was the localizations of the UI, which means you can localize the UI in whatever language you want. To see how you can do that, you can take a look at, for example, the intro webinar, the first webinar where Mark shows how to do that. But then when you have a localization, yeah, so what's the language that is shown is determined by the system language. So if you have your system set so that you get all the dialogues and everything in French, for example, then kmconfig will also come up in French. But you can override it and set a different language by setting the language environment variable. So for example, language equals km_kh space kmconfig. If you run that in a terminal, then it will come up in Khmer. So let's try that. So I have now my system in German here. So you can see with the trash icon here. And if you start Keyman configuration, comes up in German, all buttons in German. And so let's try Khmer, language equals kmconfig. And oops, it still comes up in English. And that's because we have the language identifier wrong. So it isn't always very obvious what you have to use here, but you can find out by looking in the directory /users/share/locale. And that comes up with the long list of subdirectories. So those are all the languages that Ubuntu comes with localizations for. And then you can look in the subdirectory of the language of your interest. And each subdirectory has an LC messages subdirectory. And if you look in that, you see localizations files for the different applications. And Keyman isn't in here. So let's look in the other folder, km_kh, and there we have keyman config.mo. So this tells us we have to use the km_kh language identifier for to get the Khmer localizations in with kmconfig. And if you do that, then it comes up in Khmer. Okay, so there's one last area that I want to talk about. So you might not know, but Keyman for Linux comes with a number of command line tools, which might come handy if you write bash scripts or want to automate installation of keyboards and so on. So I thought I'll go over those commands very quickly. So one is km package install that downloads and installs a Keyman keyboard package from the keyman.com web server. Or if you pass the -f parameter, you can install a local.kmp file. Km package uninstall is basically the reverse. It removes the Keyman keyboard package. And km package get only downloads the Keyman keyboard package without installing it. And then km package list installed shows all the installed keyboards and some information about them, name, version, description, and so on. And finally, we have km-kvk to Ldml. That takes a Keyman kvk file, which is an on-screen keyboard file that's used for on smartphone and tablets, and converts that to an Ldml file, which is then used by the onboard Keyman program. And so this command gets called internally by onboard if it wants to display a Keyman layout. All those commands take additional parameters, and you can look at the man pages for the details. So that's my talk. Are there any questions?
I had one, but I forgot what it was. I have to go back a few slides, quite a long way. It's pretty minor, don't worry about it. What was it now? It was something to do with the, oh, I know. In your demo, a couple of things in your demo. One was when you had a Keyman keyboard on, the icon was showing a Keyman icon rather than the keyboard icon.
Right.
So just thought I'd flag that.
Yeah. I don't know why that is. I have to take a look.
Just
yeah.
as long as you know, that's good. And what was the other one was also in the demo. No, is there a way to look at the speed keys in the configuration or something to find out the switch keys, or is that also just shown when you click on Keyman? I forgot to look. The hotkey to convert to switch on the keyboard. Where can I find the hotkey for a keyboard? Or
Well, that's a system setting.
Okay.
So yeah, you have to look in the system what that key is and how you can configure that. So there's no special setting for Keyman.
But because the keyboard is considered a system keyboard, there's no problem with that, because then that will just trigger Keyman from the system keyboard selection.
Right. Yeah.
Excelente. Yep. Looking good. Looking good.
Okay, there's a question on the chat. What happens when Keyman tries to send an error report and the computer is not connected to the internet? Yeah, so I think it gets stored locally, and then if it's online again, then it will get sent then.
So are there any particular Linux plans, Linux specific plans that you have that you want to see in the next cycle or so? Not necessarily features, but what else what bugs and stuff are you thinking of attacking, or what specific Linuxy things are you think you're attacking next?
Well, there are several things, but we haven't talked what our priorities will be, so I can't can't say too much about that.
I can probably say something if you want, Eberhard.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. So part of the core work we're doing in version 15 is Ldml keyboard support. So that's the full Ldml specification, not just keyboard specification, not the cut down version, which is what Onboard currently uses. And we also, which is for all the platforms, but for Linux specifically, we would really like to try and address some of the issues we have with race conditions if you type very quickly. So we call that a serialized input, which is what we put a fair bit of effort into Windows for that. And hopefully we can find a similar solution for Linux. And this is something that actually also affects KMFL and some of the other input methods out there as well.
Yes, that is, yeah, that's that big old X Windows problem, isn't it? And if the backspaces catch up with each other. Do you have ideas on how to solve that?
I have ideas. We have ideas, and it may look similar to the way we did it on Windows, which is it's quite freaky and fun, and you probably enjoy the blog post. So basically, we end up making our own input queue, which is embedded in the system input queue, and we push everything through that input queue, and by that way we can control the order of events.
Right.
But it does look kind of weird if you actually try and visualize it.
Yes, I can imagine. Good. I'm glad you're coming up with something that's great.
Oh, there's plenty of work. We've also got a nice little list of bugs. If Eberhard ever gets bored, he can always open up GitHub. Another thing that's actually on the roadmap right now is Fcitx support, which is used widely in CJK environments. And there's actually one of the Fcitx maintainers has just submitted a pull request adding that support in. So Eberhard, you're in the process of reviewing that, right?
Yes, yeah, in the middle of that.
Great, that's exciting. It's good to see this moving forward. So thank you, Eberhard and the team.
Yeah. So another thing we should address pretty soon is support for Weyland. So there are currently some problems with that, and we should make that work.
Yes, because aren't the main distros going to, or is Ubuntu going to Weyland in 22? Is that?
Yes, yeah.
So we've got a year and a bit, a year.
This isn't specifically Linux, oh, sorry, Keyman for Linux, but we're also aiming to make more of Keyman developer work within a Linux and Mac OS environments to make it less dependent on Windows.
Yep.
So that will bring
Oh, that'll be good
benefits
too.
to people like yourself.
Yeah. I'll just keep CamComp alive and I'll be happy.
CamComp without wine would be my goal.
Yes.
So I think Makarai had a question about how to update a keyboard if there's a newer version. Can you do that from the user interface?
That's a good question, and I don't know the answer. I haven't checked that. Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you everybody for coming along to this presentation. I think we've hit the half-hour mark, so we'll wrap it up. Thank you, Everhard. And the presentation slides should be available now through the website, and the video should be available probably in about 12 to 18 hours.